Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Carvalho from ZK Research, and I'm here doing an AI Disruptor edition of my ZKast series. The idea here is that I'm interviewing executives from key companies that I feel are part of the overall AI ecosystem. I'm joined today by Charlie Giancarlo, CEO of Pure Storage. Charlie, just a quick bio on yourself, and for those that don't know Pure Storage, tell me a little bit what Pure does.
Will do. Zayas, by the way, great to see you here in person. We were just talking about that. It's great to be in person once again. So, as you might be able to tell, I've been around the industry for a while. What you may not know is I was an early innovator in the internet protocol industry. The internet was at Cisco for 15 years, brought about things such as Ethernet switching, Wi-Fi, WebEx, video conferencing, voice over IP, so a whole bunch of different innovations that we made there. Left after 15 years, went into private equity for a while, as I know it, the dark side. Learned a lot about working with leading edge companies in that space, but then wanted to get back into an operational role. And as I looked at the industry, I thought, and as I was looking at different opportunities, Pure Storage came to me, and we'll talk about this later, but really saw a great opportunity with Pure Storage. So what does Pure Storage do? I consider Pure Storage the disruptor in the data storage industry. Now, the interesting thing about the data storage industry is it's 40 or 50 years old. It's one of the oldest parts of the high-tech ecosystem. And even so, it's one of the last to embrace really new concepts in terms of how to be networked, how to be available, how to operate as a cloud. And this is where we're driving Pure Storage. We are easily, the innovator in the industry. We're now number 2 in all-flash storage across all categories. So it's an exciting place to be, and let's get into it.
Yeah, we were both much younger men when I first met you.
Yes, we were.
Now,
it's hard to believe.
Now, this is Nvidia's GTC week, right? And obviously, when we talk about AI, the GPU has become front and center. Absolutely. I mean, even if you just look at their stock price, I mean, everybody understands the role it plays. Now, one of the reasons I'm excited to talk to you is because the GPU itself isn't going to allow you to modernize and be successful with AI. Right. In fact, I want to harken back to a conversation we had when you became CEO of Pure Storage. I think I saw that on the newswire, and I texted you, and I said, why'd you join a storage company?
Yeah.
And you went through this.
Probably, 6 months earlier would be the last thing that either you or I would have thought.
Yes,
that's right.
That's true, because I always considered you a person that likes to work in these markets in transition, right? Yeah. And you walked me through a scenario where you talked about how AI was coming, and there were 3 legs to the AI stool, that being processors, storage, and networking. And if you could maybe just, for the audience, recap that and the thought process you went through when you joined this company.
Yeah. So as you indicated, you were surprised. I was surprised myself because I had not been thinking about data storage. But when Pure approached me and I started looking into the industry, what I saw was an industry that, in a sense, wasn't keeping up with the rest of technological advancement. So what do I mean by that? Processors were continuing to advance, and Nvidia was, strong even back then. But there were other things. There was ARM and a lot of different developments in the processor space. Networking was continuing to advance. At that time it was probably 10 gigabit going to 100 gigabit, going to 400 gigabit. Now talking about 800 gigabit. So advancing very, very rapidly, and scale as well. And yet data storage was still stuck behind, first of all, magnetic hard disks. So if you think about it, we usually think of computers as being very advanced things, not based, we no longer use vacuum tubes. No. But we still use a mechanical hard disk for data storage.
Which are destined to fail.
In fact, preordained. Yeah. They'll fail in 5 years. But actually, that wasn't the thing that really attracted me, although I knew that flash would eventually replace hard disk. And that would enable the following. Today, data is a second-class citizen. It sits behind the application. It's like the old external hard drives that used to get attached to your computer. We probably all did that. But then the cloud came along, and you didn't have to attach something to your computer that you couldn't share with anybody else, that you had to replace every now and then you'd have to get the data, from wherever it was to wherever the new thing that you bought. Now you use the cloud, and it just keeps expanding, right? And yes, you'll pay a little bit more to store more, but it's very simple. You don't have to make any changes. Believe it or not, enterprise storage still operates the old way. That is to say that the devices are basically captive to their application. So that's bad for two reasons. One is they have to be replaced every 5 years, and then you go through what's called a data migration, and that's very hard and very expensive and risk prone.
It's very painful.
Very painful. Yeah. But now let's think about AI. Those arrays are captive behind their application and don't have either the performance or the connectivity for that data to be used for anything else. In AI, you want all of your data to be made available. You want your data set free. And so that's where we're innovating, is in creating a networked environment for data storage. Doesn't matter if it's on our product on your premise or if it's on our software in the cloud. And it doesn't matter how many different data centers a customer may have. It all looks like a single pool of storage that other applications with the right rights, of course, can get access to and therefore use for things like AI.
Yeah, see, to me, the importance of that comes down to, there's an expression in data sciences that says good data leads to good insights. Well, if that's true, the corollary is true, where silos of data will lead to fragmented insights.
Correct.
And I think that's what most companies are dealing with today.
Right.
And so you think about the expression, we used to say 10 years ago, every company is a tech company.
Yeah.
Well, every company today is a data company.
Correct.
And so the quality of data that you have has a lot to do with that, right? So
Indeed. Yeah. And you want the data to be fresh. You don't want to be making, first of all, why make copies of data just so you can use it for AI?
So you can buy more storage.
Well, okay. But the smart way to do it is just to upgrade what you've already got in place so it has plenty of performance and is networked so that it can be real-time data, the freshest data, but also be made available for AI.
Yeah, and those are good points. And so I know you talk to a lot of customers, and while AI has been hyped beyond anything I can remember in my career, where are customers with AI deployments today? Because in practicality, I don't see a lot of them.
No, and especially the way you describe it. Where customers are with AI today is if AI exists in their environment, it's in a very specialized environment. It turns out we have, I don't know, between 1 and 200, maybe more customers that use our product for AI. Now, I have to joke and laugh a little bit when I say it's traditional AI, not necessarily ChatGPT. But it's protein folding, or it's a drug analysis, or it's high-speed trading. It's a variety of different more traditional AI environments, but it's a specialized environment. They're not using AI to analyze all of their data. Where they are today is following the hype cycle. They're looking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do around training for LLMs and for ChatGPT? Or they're thinking, how are we going to use LLMs in our workspace environment? And I think they're really very much at the very front end of that, and they don't yet realize that most of the data that they're going to want to get access to is going to be inaccessible. You might remember data lakes and data warehouses. This was all in the vein of, I have to have this special price performance storage so that I can move it out of there and put it into higher performance storage so that I could analyze it, right? It was this multi-tier environment because data had to be moved around in order to be used or analyzed. And we're now at the point, and this would be the more modern way of doing it, where you're not moving the data around. You're allowing the application to use the data where it is right now. Under the rubric of data has gravity. It's hard to move, and it's hard to keep current.
Yeah, and so despite the lack of momentum, I guess, there's still a lot of momentum behind AI. I do believe we're at an AI inflection point.
I would agree. Yeah.
In the industry, and certainly ChatGPT just to raise an awareness that you can do so many things. So when you talk about modernization of storage, what does that mean? Yeah.
So it really means, at its simplest level, it is two things. One is raising the overall performance of storage. So let me speak to that. And then secondly, it means having storage be a first-class citizen, meaning it can be accessed regardless of where it is. So starting with raising the level of performance. Most storage arrays in enterprise, because storage is usually 20-30% of the total spend of a data center in terms of infrastructure, it's expensive. Because of that, customers have bought the storage that fit their application profile from a performance standpoint, and it usually doesn't have a lot of excess performance to be able to satisfy other needs, right? We now can replace 80% of the data in the world's on hard disk. In enterprises, probably more than 60%. Hard disk has limitations. We can now replace hard disk with flash, and we can replace it at a hard disk price point, but it's 5 times more performant. So simple, and it's
because that was always the trade-off. Do I really want to pay more?
That's right.
But that's not.
But now they don't need to pay more. It lasts. With our Evergreen program, it lasts forever. So it is 10 to 20 times more reliable, and 10x lower space, power, and cooling. So same price, much better everywhere else. I mean, there's really no reason to buy a hard disk anymore. So you get automatic additional performance. But even if we had that with today's software environments, that would still be hidden behind an application stack, because that's how enterprise storage is built. We have a new capability which we call Pure Fusion. What Pure Fusion does is it basically allows the array itself, the data storage itself, to be part of a networked environment where data is accessed by policy. And so now, as opposed to being hidden behind its primary application, it's now accessible to other applications. So think of it as virtualizing storage or networking storage so that the data is available.
And we've been talking about that for so long.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. Now, when you think of the continuum of AI, from training to inferencing, we have Gen AI now. Talk about the role storage plays in kind of across the continuum. I imagine it's more important in certain aspects.
It is. That's a very perceptive question, and it's more important in areas that you wouldn't expect. So, for example, in training, especially if you're training on something other than images and video, right? The amount of data, the amount of data just calculated in bytes tends to be rather low. First of all, you're curating your data to make sure it's only your highest quality data on the training side of things. And typically it's, a petabyte or a few petabytes, right? Which these days is not a lot.
No, that's not a lot.
That's not a lot. And that's training. Now, when you're doing inferring, right, you're trying to get access to a lot more of your data. Because what that is you have already created or you're buying a large language model, and now you're trying to, let's say, make it specialize in your own environment. So it's a little bit more data, but still same kind of order of magnitude, right? 1 to 10 petabytes. It's not until you want to use it in your general purpose operations where, okay, today it's in marketing and tomorrow it's in finance and the day after that, it's in sales, where you want to give it access to all of your data inside the enterprise. And in that case, my view is you just want to raise the level of performance of your overall data environment and make it accessible via software and networking, right? So it's not so much it's not dedicated. It's just as a company goes through its normal process of renewing its infrastructure, doing it with AI in mind, and raising the level, making it accessible.
I see. Now, the other side of the AI coin, though, is how you use AI to improve your customer's experience, so the operational side of things.
Right.
And so you can talk about that, because we've been talking about how storage enables better AI, but AI can enable better storage.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a great question, and actually I just saw from one of my product leaders the other day an actual demo in this area. We're like most companies, we're experimenting, I should say, with AI in a number of different areas, marketing, sales, et cetera, but also in terms of making it easier for customers to do everything from configure our products to predicting what their future environment is going to be, to also just making it easier to be able to extract the right kinds of data from their environment for the purposes that they want. So already we believe that within a year, it'll be easy for customers to be able to really issue normal English commands and have the system automatically configure itself, or issue queries and prompts to find out what if situations with their data environment, or to be able to plan for next week, next month, or, for example, and this was the demo, given the way the system's operating today and given our normal seasonality, let's take a retailer during Christmas, are we ready for the Christmas rush? And what do we need to do to prepare for it?
Yeah, the implications that are pretty amazing, because instead of having just highly technical people interface with your product, now really anybody can, line of business people or administrators.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty fascinating.
You know,
we democratize access.
Democratize it, right? But there's one other thing. You know, one of the things that Pure's been actually was part of our founding by our founder, but also part of our ethic, is we want to make our system simple. As simple, in fact, Kaz, who started the company, said, iPhone had just come out. He said, there's no instruction manual. Why can't we build our product without an instruction manual? And he did. And he actually did. He had all the instructions on a business card.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And he had his 9-year-old son configure one. But, you know, when you're having hundreds of these or thousands of these, and in fact, you're in multiple environments, you're in the cloud, you're in your own cloud, different data centers, one device can be simple, lots of them can be really complex. So where we're very much focused now, and this is where both Pure Fusion and this AI comes in, we want the entire system to operate simply. We want it that we don't need, you know, people that have been trained for, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks on very complicated stuff. We want the entire system to be able to be managed and to operate in a very simple fashion.
Now, when you think about all the infrastructure required to make AI work, right? It's not plug and play, right? There's a lot of things that have to do together. So, you know, talk about the partnership you have with Nvidia and how the two of you have worked together to actually simplify a lot of that heavy lifting for customers.
Absolutely. Well, we have a number of new announcements in this area, but we've worked with Nvidia really with the focus being on, if you will, the customer, the enterprise customer, and getting themselves ready and making it easier for them to get up and running and start using AI for what's called a retrieval augmented generation, right? So what, you know, that's a RAG. RAG. It's a terrible acronym for some, which if you boil it down, really is to be able to issue prompts, get answers, and make sure that those answers have been tested against your actual data, you know, and aren't hallucinations, as they say. And the tricky part, and the reason why we wanted to work with Nvidia and why they wanted to work with us, is that being able to get access to the right data at the right time with the right latency was a critical part of being able to deliver the results that we wanted to for our customers.
I know from an Nvidia standpoint, their choice of partners is critical because they do not want people spending money on their products. And let's face it, Nvidia's expensive.
Yes.
So if it's sitting idle for long periods of time,
correct,
they're not getting full advantage of it. So I know they're very, very careful with the partners they pick. So
indeed, yeah.
So kudos on that.
Yeah. Now, by the way, we've been working with Nvidia. You know, you might remember the Airy product we introduced. I think 6 years ago. It was quite a long time ago. And, you know, a variation of that, of course, is what the Meta Research Supercluster has been using. So
well, and that was, for people that don't know, it was a turnkey engineered system that had network storage compute in it.
Right.
So you could almost just roll it out of them.
You just roll it out, and software with all of the common databases and so forth, so that a data scientist who's typically not an infrastructure engineer, a data scientist can get up and running in their chosen application environment within an hour, which is, you know, pretty amazing. So again, going back to the simplicity.
Yeah, I talked to one of the Massachusetts hospital that was actually running Airy, and they talked about how fast it was, and you know they were worried that they were going to be paying these data scientists, you know, for months before the thing got up.
Before something came out, yeah.
Now you had mentioned Evergreen, and I know when you started here, I'll harken back 7 years ago, you were very excited about Evergreen.
Yes.
And that everything I read about, everything I talk to your customers about, Evergreen is your secret sauce.
Yes.
So for those not familiar with Evergreen, can you just walk through that?
Sure. And first of all, I'll ask the audience to suspend their disbelief for a moment, because there's nothing else in the world like this. Nothing even close. Imagine anything that you depend on, whether it's your phone or your car, or if you're, you know, an IT manager, any piece of equipment or system that you might have. And now imagine for a moment that it never gets old and never has to be replaced, and you never have any kind of change-related downtime. Your applications never have to come down. And that's what Evergreen is. So to get more specific...
That is hard to believe.
That is hard to believe, right? Once a customer purchases one of our products, we then provide them what we call an Evergreen Forever program, which means that periodically we will... Now, of course, software is included in that, so software upgrades, all of which are non-disruptive, right? So the application that's working with the storage continues operating. There's not a millisecond that's lost in any of these upgrades, right? Secondly, we will also start replacing the hardware. Depending on what piece of hardware, there's a regular schedule for hardware replacement, all the way up to the entire chassis, which we can replace non-disruptively. Again, the application never goes down. And we do this not only year after year, but decade after decade. We're now into our 11th or 12th year of doing this, where a customer might never spend another dollar of capital for all these replacements, just our subscription, and the system's always new. So and we manage it entirely through a SaaS service. So customer interacts with the product through SaaS, and it looks like a SaaS service. Now, another variation of this is what we call Evergreen One, where the customer never buys it in the first place, and it's a subscription from the beginning. And this could be, as I mentioned before, it could be on a hyperscaler, it could be in a colo, or if it's on the customer premise, we actually pay them for hosting the service. They're hosting. It's a service. It's just an SLA. We manage it entirely. Customer interacts just like they would at AWS or any hyperscaler or any service provider, and then we manage the environment. So it's very, very cool.
So you've been doing this, you said 11, 12 years.
Yes.
Do you foresee a time where that reaches a limitation and it does need an upgrade?
But what do you mean by an upgrade? You mean like instead of it being
where you would have to disrupt to replace it to get to the next
disrupt?
Yeah.
No. It costs us a little more to make sure that every new rev of software, every new rev of hardware, that it can be put into place in existing customers without disruption. And as I'd mentioned before, sometimes we have customers that have, even though we've asked them to upgrade, for whatever set of reasons, they've not upgraded for a period of time. Finally, we say, look, you need to upgrade now. And we've had to upgrade the entire chassis, everything in it. And we can do that non-disruptively.
No downtime.
No downtime.
No downtime storage. Well, that's fascinating. So, was you around when I was an IT pro? And, all right, and when you think about that position you have then, how defensible is that? That if, obviously it's a very competitive space that you're in, right? But if somebody tried to replicate that today, how big is that moat?
We think the moat's pretty big. First of all, we've had non-disruptive storage, Evergreen, for 10 years now, over 10 years, as I mentioned, and no one's come up with it yet, right? So we really have four, I call them strategic and sustainable competitive advantages. One is this, the Evergreen, right? You really have to start from the foundational architecture of both the software and the product to enable that Evergreen, which would require our competitors to start from scratch, which is an expensive proposition. What successful company restarts from scratch? Very hard to do.
Very few.
Right, very few. The second one, which we've not talked about, is we're the only company that has written our software direct to flash. We do not use SSDs, right? Now, in order to tell you why it's beneficial to not use SSDs, I have to describe what an SSD is. When the flash vendors said, and you may remember this in the mid-noughts, because laptops then still had hard disk, they said, gee, we'd like to get flash in laptops. And actually, we'd like to get them in computers and servers and everywhere else. But, they all have different operating systems, and flash is different than hard disk. It's going to take us forever to get these companies to change their operating system to use flash. Great idea. We'll make flash look like a hard disk. That's what an SSD is. Makes flash look like a hard disk, and is brilliant because they could substitute, just you pop one out, pop the other one in, and away it goes. No changes in software. So brilliant from a flash vendor standpoint, but the software underutilizes the power of a semiconductor. It's like making a computer look like a typewriter. Okay, so what we did, because we were the first to really come out with an all-flash system, we needed to take as much advantage of the semiconductor as we could. So we wrote our software direct to flash. Because of that, you see it in our gross margins, but we have higher performance, we have lower costs, and we're able to make flash last at least twice as long. We guarantee our flash for more than 7 years, and frankly, our experience is that it lasts 10 years, whereas an SSD will last 5 at best. Yeah. So, and we get higher reliability. So, and now we're getting higher density. So, direct to flash is a big competitive advantage. I mentioned Fusion, which we call our cloud operating model. That's also a key competitive advantage. But then this final thing that I'll mention, and you might say, well, why hasn't anybody else done this? We're the only vendor that can satisfy block, file, and object. We at the full range of price performance. I talked about replacing hard disk systems, so everything from AI level performance all the way down to archive, low cost disk, and we can from large to small, with the one operating environment and one management environment. We don't have different hardware, software systems for each one of those different use cases. Every other vendor has assembled their portfolio by acquisition. They have half a dozen or more different hardware, software constructs. Think about it from an enterprise standpoint. You might have one vendor and still have half a dozen different systems.
Yeah, well, that's true across the whole infrastructure spectrum, not just in storage.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we can now satisfy that with one operating environment. Think of the simplicity that brings to a vendor's operating environment, right? So, or to a customer's operating environment and to our operating environment. So, that's very powerful. And again, our competitors would need to revamp their entire. They'd have to start from scratch.
Yeah. And so, just one last question: if you roll the clock 5 years, and I've always liked talking to you because you always have a good vision of where the future is going to go. What does your industry look like? If you're a customer of Pure Storage, what's that operational model look like?
Right. Well, first of all, I think we take a large fraction of the disruptions, whether planned or unplanned, that happen in the enterprise environment is due to storage. We take that out. All of a sudden, the storage managers, the data managers go home on the weekend and don't worry about getting calls in the middle of the night.
Disruptionless enterprise.
Or disruptionless enterprise. The second is we make data a first-class citizen. We allow that data to be accessible for things such as AI, but other environments as well. 3 is we bring down the cost of storing data. And 4, and this one we are especially proud of, by replacing hard disk, we are 1/10 the space, power, and cooling. If the typical data center, if data in the typical data center, data storage, uses 20% of the space and power, and we're 1/10, we remove almost 20% of data center power. I mean, it's remarkable. So one of the things our team's very proud of is what we do for the environment.
Yeah. So more sustainable. Lower costs, better performance.
Exactly.
It seems like a no-brainer.
No-brainer, right?
So anything else you want to add?
Theos, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
It's great, Charlie. Certainly, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So on behalf of Charlie Giancarlo, CEO of Pure Storage, I'm Zeus Caravallo from ZK Richardson. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next ZKast.